Good morning, everyone. My name is Joren, and I'm a senior student here at the Village Zendo. So I'm glad to be here with you this morning and to see everyone who's here in Zendo and online. I did want to mention that I jumped in to give this talk at the last minute in response to the previously scheduled Dharma talker being called away to be with family. I really wanted to respond to the needs of the moment, but I also wanted to try putting together a talk without weeks of planning. Usually I like to write everything out and let it sit for a while and then come back to it, rework it, overthink it a bunch, and do it that way. Giving a spontaneous talk is daunting to me, I must say. And I don't really want to suggest that this talk is spontaneous. I have made the most of the hours since I made the decision to give this talk. So it is hard to be present. It's hard not to hide behind language. But this is one of the main things that practice is about, of course, being present, not hiding behind language. So that said, spontaneous or not, I will base my talk today on a koan that's been on my mind and that I now have an opportunity to talk about. Caoshan's reality body from the Book of Serenity. Caoshan asked Elder Day, the Buddha's true reality body is like space. It manifests form in response to beings, like the moon in the water. How do you explain the principle of response? Elder Day said, like an ass looking in a well. Caoshan said, you said a lot, but you only said 80%. Elder Day said, what about you, teacher? Caoshan said, like the well, looking at the ass. I've been working with this koan in the last weeks as I've been going through some feelings about criticism from others, direct or perceived. The koan first sets out its message in an exalted, poetic, amazing image. The Buddha's reality body is like space. It manifests form in response to beings, like the moon in the water. And Caoshan asks for Elder Day's understanding of the principle of response. My first reaction was to laugh at Elder Day's answer, like an ass looking in a well. Like he's demonstrating his own very human understanding, his own very human resistance to this exalted poetic image. Kind of like saying, I'd rather be playing video games and experiencing the moon and the water as a manifestation of form in response to beings. Then, getting deeper into the koan and the commentary, it became clear to me that Elder Day is not the comedic fall guy that I took him for. He's talking about zazen, of course. The ass looking in the well is actually Elder Day being open about his own practice. The ass is studying the self to forget the self. And yet I can't get away from the sense of the words. My first reaction is still there on some level. I can relate to the feeling of being an ass looking in a well. This image jives with a certain self-deprecating humor that I have, for better or for worse. The ass is a creature that bears certain connotations in ancient Chinese culture and in our present day culture. Feeling like an ass. Lately, I've been through some difficult experiences with various family members around our parenting of our very challenging transgender teenager. I've been feeling criticized, dismissed, insulted, rejected. I've noticed how my response to such experiences can be to dwell on it, chew it over, be caught up in resentment, internalize it. And I did remember all my life, I've asserted values that were different from my family's values. Why suddenly be dismayed or even surprised at all that they are critical of my parenting? Despite the obvious, I realized I continue to seek their approval when actually it would just be okay to acknowledge their disapproval. Why be surprised that we are experiencing in my immediate family a microcosm of our natural culture wars? Why internalize it? I realize it's possible to just try to accept the negative characterization. Somewhere in there is a sense of liberation. Seeing the koan through the eye of compassion, the ass looks into the well. Buddha's true reality body is like space. It manifests form in response to beings. It's about meeting you where you are, you meeting me where I am. Just the fabric coming into being moment by moment, with each crossing of the shuttle and the threads, to refer to an image from the verse of this koan, which I'll share in a minute. The well looking at the ass is the vast space of intimate meeting, intimate response. The negative characterization of the ass does in fact suggest certain qualities: not knowing the answer, feeling stupid, perhaps being the object of derision. Feeling like an ass in everyday life is hard. Living as we do in hierarchies of knowing the answer, being smart, being on top of things. But the ass in the koan exemplifies the precept of not knowing. The ass looking in the well is the ass turning inward, just sitting. It's not an arbitrary choice of using an ass in this example. The ass is an emblem of a dumb, passive creature, an emblem of a stubborn creature, potentially stuck, not moving. To refer to a line from the chant that we often do on retreat, the song of the jewel mirror awareness. Practice intimately, working within, as though a fool, like an idiot. If you can achieve continuity, this is called the host within the host. Somehow, from Thanksgiving on, I found myself stuck in this groove of self-criticism, having various interactions with others, stirring up these feelings, getting messages of disapproval from others. To some degree, I have been able to practice with these feelings. In other ways, I've been swept away into the old emotional paradigms from my family, wanting their approval, but disapproving of them. Waking up at night, I obsessed on feeling like an ass, rejection and judgment, feeling a fool, an idiot. In a moment of insight, I experienced being in this hell realm as a form of grieving for my brother who died recently. Feeling judged and rejected in our family is something both he and I struggled with, wanted to get away from. Knowing he sedated himself to escape these feelings, I suddenly so regretted my own investment in my self-critique, my own stoking the fires of this destructive delusion. For himself, for him, and for myself, I suddenly saw the importance of letting this go. Back to the Buddha's true reality body and the principle of response that Caoshan asks Elder Day to explain. Feeling like an ass and practicing like the ass in the koan, a subtle shade of difference. Practicing like the ass looking in the well. Elder Day explains the principle of response in this way. The ass looking into the well, into the dark, focused interior space of the well. There is a dim reflection there of the ass itself, studying the self, to space without distraction, a space of practicing intimately working within, as though a fool, like an idiot. Caoshan says, "You've said a lot, but you only said 80%. When Elder Day asks for Caoshan's meaning, Caoshan says, it's like the well looking at the ass. Letting go of knowing the ass is connecting intimately with its own being, and once there's a shift in looking, the ass lets go of looking itself. The well is a space, a vast space. The well itself takes on the phenomenon of looking. This is the principle of response. The space between the ass and the well collapses into space itself. The ass experiences space, is in space, without looking, without being one who looks at space. This past week was the end of the semester for me. I had a group of 10 students working on final media arts projects. Well, we could have just had a final class where the students showed their individual projects in the classroom and then said goodbye for the winter break. I devised a plan to install the projects in a gallery off campus, asking the department to rent a funky collective gallery space for not a lot of money. I thought the ambition of a public show would help motivate the students, potentially being seen by a wider public. In the weeks leading up to the end of the term, I started to worry that the projects were not going to come together. Some students were missing classes, a lot of classes, or showing up without much progress. Students were calling in sick. They had competing papers, projects. I started quietly hoping that the plan would break down, either over cost issues and bureaucracy, or over student apathy. I started feeling like a fool for having set the students up for failure, as well as setting myself up for a huge push to make it all happen by the exhibition date. But the plan went doggedly forward. Somehow the department wanted it to happen. The department chair wanted it to happen and was willing to pay for it. And somehow the students had bought into the idea, even though it seemed unclear just what they would be showing. It was a huge sense of not knowing. Well, the show happened this past Wednesday and Thursday. The students really showed up. The show seemed to be an integrated whole, student projects responding thoughtfully to the assignment, to my shock and amazement. Students responding with enthusiasm to each other. The show emerged as an integrated space. From my space of not knowing what would possibly materialize and doubting deeply, from the student space of stress and precarity, a space emerged, a space of collective effort and creation. Each student's distinct ideas took shape more clearly in this bigger space. The principle of response is further elaborated in the verse of this koan. The ass looks at the well looks at the ass. Wisdom is all embracing. Purity pervades with abundance. Behind the elbow, who discerns the seal? In the house, no books are kept. The loom threads aren't strung, the work of the shuttle. The pattern going vertically and horizontally, the meaning is distinct of itself. In this verse, the creation of the fabric of this space is a moment-by-moment reality. It doesn't exist or hold together prior to the response of the shuttle and the threads at each point of contact. Yet the distinct point of contact radiates out through space, vertically and horizontally, in every direction. The ass is characterized by not knowing. Behind the elbow, who discerns the seal? In the house, no books are kept. The seal behind the elbow is spoken of in the commentary of this koan from the Book of Serenity. It's a complex story of political alliance and betrayal, shifting power, and someone saved from execution, and then unknowingly executing the one who saved him. Illustrating the principle of not knowing and response, it suggests the wisdom of stepping back from extreme emotional reactions and actions, and suggests dedicating oneself to not knowing as a way of liberation. The seal behind the elbow is this dedication of not knowing. Who knows this seal is there behind the elbow? Who discerns it? The commentary on this line in the verse says, even celestial eyes and dragon eyes cannot see. The self who wins and loses, grabs and controls, keeps an account of successes and failures. The self that lets go as the well looks at the ass, enveloping the ass in the vast robe of liberation. In the house, no books are kept. The constant accounting that sometimes we make of ourselves, no books are kept. The principle of response is this manifestation of form in response to beings, like the moon in the water. When I was sitting with the Bolivian Sangha yesterday online, I was momentarily struck by the space that we've sat in together, woven across continents, this huge space. Chishin Wick writes in his commentary on this koan, if you totally realize yourself like the vast empty sky, you see that you manifest according to circumstances. But the truth is, whether or not you realize it, that's what's happening. So I appreciate everyone here today, for the well, for being the well, looking at the ass, and giving me this opportunity to share the space of being here together today.